champion, and of course Ferrari's biggest fan, as we are now going to go well and truly through the second half of the season, or really around of the first half of the season, depending if you're looking at the original calendar in the 3D colors over here of the Scuderia Ferrari, or the 2D calendar that you can see behind me. It is time to introduce the lucky or unlucky round 13, but really only round 11 of this pulsating 2026 FIA Formula 1 World Championship. And of course, in this race introduction to the circuit that will be celebrating 40 years of Formula 1 racing, it is my pleasure to introduce the Hungarian, the home of the Hungarian Grand Prix. In the race introduction, we will take a look at the history behind the circuit, the latest news, of course, as well how well Scuderia Ferrari we have done, also how well me, Jan the Smaliksan champion, has done here at this iconic circuit that obviously, nowadays is pretty much, a fixture on the Formula 1 calendar and will be at least for the next decade, along with the tracks like Miami having the longest, standing contract, which is quite impressive for Hungary. We will take a look at what to expect, why this may be and really should be a great track for us as Scuderia Ferrari to record our third victory of the season, which will be absolutely essential, especially if we want to be fighting for and that elusive not just constructors but also the drivers championship. We will of course take a look how the drivers standings and the constructor standing looks like, and of course I will also be talking about what to expect, because we will actually in that concurrent 2025-2025 season we will actually be sprinting in Belgium, but of course we will also tell you about how well we have done here at the Hungarian, where we've always been on pole position. That's right. So let's dive right into it. Before we, of course, with the Ferrari SF1000 T818 Formula 1 Racing Simulator, take the beautiful Scarlet Ferrari for a spin, and then I will turn around this Scarlet Ferrari red iMac, and we will take a look at the Hungarian, the track, and just how well we have done here over the course of the 40 years. So I think we can start with the news. The news might not always be from the Formula 1 world. The great thing obviously is that Lewis Hamilton was not, penalized for hitting the mechanic, or the fact that the mechanic simply, or maybe due to the miscommunication when Hamilton went from the medium, the yellow mark tires to the hard, white mark tires when the wing wasn't adjusted, for a little bit more downforce in time, and as a result the mechanic was still there when Hamilton has got on a green light. So Ferrari was fined, I believe 30,000 euros, and 10,000 is suspended. So that is really the punishment for it. But obviously Hamilton, being innocent, immediately stopping, checking on the mechanic, doing pretty much everything right. So I'm very happy, that obviously we didn't lose any points there, because that could have been costly. That would have cost us. There could be a 5 to 10 second additional penalty that could have cost us, the fourth place. And you never know, 2 points might win the championship. Just look at last season, right? Then there's obviously not that much, to talk about, as now the Formula 1 will make its way across Europe, from going from Western to the Eastern Europe, and of course then it's all to the relatively early summer break, because if you think about it, that the race will be on the 26th of July. We will not be racing, for example, just like we were last year, right? Into the beginning of the August, which of course also means that the fifth Formula 1 Grand Prix sprint weekend of the 2026-2026 season, which will take place at the Zandvoort, which is saying goodbye to Formula 1 this year forever, unlike, let's say, Circuit de Barcelona, or like the Belgium Grand Prix, which we just had, will be doing next year, where they will obviously, be then, taking place, biannually instead of, having a race every year. That will then happen obviously a little bit earlier, but still at the end of August. So, everybody's looking kind of forward to, the 3 full weeks off, but, it is very important to end it on high, right? So, obviously after Belgium, there's a feeling, especially in the Scuderia Ferrari camp, that we really should have won this race, that we really should have gone on, that we had a chance, especially with Lewis Hamilton, who seemed to be quicker, about a tenth or two, than Charles Leclerc, which could have been all the difference, so that if Hamilton was in that position of Leclerc, obviously, maybe Antonelli would only catch him with a couple of laps to go, and Hamilton would have enough battery to defend, unlike with Leclerc, who was scored with about 10 to 9 laps laps to go. So, it will be interesting to see what happens. We definitely need a smooth weekend, but unlike Spa, or for example, when we had the Silverstone, or of course, the Red Bull Ring, the Jan Champion Ring, there are not so many straights in the Hungarian, right? You have that long straight, but it's not really that super long, and then bit of a stretch, but then lots of turns, right? And especially in the middle part of the lap, where basically just like my engineer, for example, in my Formula One obviously challenge for the 5th Formula One driver's title, Mark is always telling me that there are little squirts here and there and everywhere on the throttle. That will be great for recharging the battery, because obviously, as you will see from our F1 the 26 hot lap, actually, the cars, I expect them to be super fast, maybe even challenging the times of the last year over here, and that could play again to our favor, even though, let's not forget that Antonelli was actually the driver who has won in Monaco, right? It wasn't Charles Leclerc, for example, that you would expect. It wasn't also one of the Ferrari drivers, so we will see what happens, but Leclerc was leading the race for the majority of its duration last year, which is great, because it means that definitely we could be in for the second Charles Leclerc victory, even though for a championship might be better for Hamilton to win. But again, we don't necessarily mind. The most important thing is that Antonelli and Russell perhaps collide, or have a tangle, or especially that the young Italian doesn't collect already his 7th victory of the season. And of course, if we want to be in a title fight, only having 2 wins at effectively midway stage of the season really, makes the title challenge difficult. So let's hope we can do this, because then going to Zandvoort, it might be similar case like in Hungary, and of course with that momentum, then we would be going, to Italy, where of course, we definitely expect to win, even though it will be interesting to see what happens with the long straights and F1 26 cars, especially for the Scarlet Red Ferraris. And of course, then you have a Baku, where Leclerc is being dominant, and Singapore, which is a street circuit, and so it could well be a Ferrari driver leading the championship after Singapore, right? So there is now really a stretch where, apart from Monza, you don't really have lots of the power circuits. We have to take advantage. This is critical again for our championship. So over here, that's pretty much about the news, and of course me as Jan the Smiling Sun champion, I will be racing in Belgium, and Belgium last year was a sprint, because obviously the calendar you can see is a little bit different. Hungary was the 14th race of the season last year. It is only 13 or just 11, because obviously we didn't really run in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, so that is why you will see it like that. And then you will see the Hungarian Grand Prix as of course part of that final Dutch Grand Prix that will take place. That will be interesting to see what happens there. Now, with regards, to the schedule, so you will see this race introduction then 48 hours before the free practice starts. Free practice 1 starts there in Hungary, and then 24 hours before the free practice 1 starts at the Hungarian circuit, you will then of course see the hot lap, but with the F1 25 cars. Then 24 hours before the free practice 2 starts, then you will see the new F1 26 hot lap. You will see then the red hot lap, as the free practice will start on Friday, and then I will do the sprint qualifying during the free practice 2 of the Hungarian Grand Prix, and on Saturday during the free practice 3 you will actually see the sprint, my 3rd sprint. So let's see if we can keep that record of perfect sprint victories going, as we obviously chasing the sprint championship as well. And then when qualifying will take place for the Hungarian Grand Prix, we will do so as well for our Belgian Grand Prix. And of course, there won't be any sprint reaction, because Hungary is and has never been a sprint race. Even though we will see how many sprint races there will be next year. Again, it's wildly rumored that it will increase from 6 to potentially as high as 10, even though maybe 8 would be the better option, right? Because we have 24 races, so 6, 8 or 12, or maybe even just as little as 4 is probably the best for the sprints to go. And then when the Grand Prix proper takes place, you will obviously see me doing the Belgian Grand Prix, where I've been obviously breaking Michael Schumacher's records last year, so I'm sure you will definitely enjoy that. And 24 hours after the Grand Prix finishes, we will then do the final race reaction before we also will depart on the summer break, which we cannot wait, and hopefully it will be sunshine everywhere. It is a scorching hot summer, and we are absolutely loving it. How about you? That's right. So let's take a look at the Hungary ring. I will turn around the Scarlet Red Retina I make over here. Okay, so yeah, welcome here to the Hungary. Now we have finally gotten it right here with the race introduction. So for this round 13, of the championship, you can see how the circuit looks like over here. And again, its main overtaking features always been the start-finish straight. It is difficult to get out of the turn 14 following the car behind. So then will be a big challenge. But now, obviously, having that overtake mode, having the boost, that will be one of the overtaking spots, I believe. Heading here into the turn one, they've built quite a high curbs. That's actually a really good thing that F1 has done, right? In order to make sure that the drivers don't go over the curbs, they elevate them, and as a result, the drivers really have to stay within the lines, and you don't have the things like with the track limits, right? Because it's okay, then get on the curb, and that's a track limit itself, because it can really unsettle the car. And maybe you will see if a similar thing happens to me when I will be racing in Hungary. And then heading over here, this could definitely be overtaking opportunity, even though you're heading downhill, so you can actually brake quite late. If you are a defending driver, you can see there's quite a lot of space. Here on the Ferrari.com website, we are always saying that there are many different lines you can take, but what you could do, for example, is tuck in behind the car, and over here, if you can keep the full throttle going through turn 3 and heading over here through the blind turn 4, that could be great overtaking opportunity. But also coming out of the turn 5, there is obviously that water park over there in the background. If you do have a great traction, you could simply throw it down the inside over here of the chicane turn 7, 6 and 7, and make the overtaking spot. And here is this is fantastic for the F1 26 cars, because you obviously always accelerate, but you always have to go off the throttle, right? Through to an 8, it's like 5th, 4th gear. So a lot of the downshifting, going to the higher Fs, to again allow the car to go fast through this so-called Mickey Mouse section. You have to straighten the car going through turn 9, and that's where pretty much all the battery can be recharged. So there will be lots of, I believe, fast times. Then turn 10, relatively straightforward, but you will definitely have a high downforce there. And turn 11, very, very difficult, to take full throttle with the F1 26 cars. So that will be interesting over here to see how the cars, tackle it. Like you will see during my hand lap, I usually go 7th, 6th gear, right turn, the car turns, like it was on the rails, but it's not always the case. Then maybe you even have to go to the 5th gear, so that you don't run off the track over here. Turn 12 actually is now my specialty over here, and yes, it is very, very important to get the early exit, and make sure that the car turns the way you want it. It doesn't overturn, it doesn't sort of oversteer over here, so that you can then be full throttle immediately over here heading into the turn 13. And turns 13 and 14 are maybe the best, and critical for your lap time, because you can recharge so much of the battery, because you cannot go full throttle, you never could. And as a result over here, you will be going like 50, 60, 70, 80% of the throttle. If you play it right through these 2 turns, you will be flying down the main straight like the Scarlet Ferraris, right? That's right. So we obviously try to describe it the best we can. This circuit that's celebrating 40 years, the first race since 1986, and obviously 70 lap race, so it is quite long. Again, we will see what the weather will do. Is it was raining for me in the races quite a lot here in the Hungarian lap record of 1 minute 16.627. We will definitely be challenging that. You can see Hungarian has done a great job over here, again making that circuit attractive. It is still one of the cheapest races to attend, right? Because obviously it is located still in Eastern Europe, in Hungary, but with the water park, some of the facilities, and having Budapest with these Roman spas nearby, it is the destination that is surprisingly on the Formula 1 calendar now gonna be longer than, let's say, Barcelona, right? It always seemed kind of safe as an Olympic city, but now you can see, the Hungary ring was always like, okay, let's cut it, but now Hungary ring has already secured the future. In terms of the victories, you can see we won here 7 times, 3 times with Michael Schumacher, so we will, of course, we also won here 3 times, so we will try to surpass our legend, and of course Vettel's also won here a couple of times, Leclerc almost won it, Hamilton has victories here, so it's looking really, really good for this weekend. 9 pole positions, and 6 of them by Michael Schumacher. I have gotten 5 because I've only done 5 races over here, and I will be aiming for the 6th pole position, which would make it an outright record. At this moment, obviously, Yas Marina circuit in Abu Dhabi can join me if I manage to get a pole there. So let's see if I can make it a 6 poles at one circuit, something I've never achieved before. 9 fastest laps, I personally have gotten 4 of them, and 26 podiums, and you can see that almost podium every year. Double podium is definitely the aim over here, because if we get a double podium, of course, that means that we are almost guaranteed to outscore the Mercedes-Benz unless they finish 1st and 4th, and that's very, very important for the Constructors' Championship. So definitely do check out the hot laps, especially with the F1 26 hot lap. There will be lots of the straight mode, so obviously down the main straight, replacing the DRS also from turn 1 and 2, but also, for example, heading from turns 3 and 4, and here from 11 and 12. So there should be 4 of these zones, so that's gonna be interesting. But what's gonna be even more interesting is who will win the race. At the moment, the 2026 Formula 1 Drivers' Championship looks as follows. Andrea Kimi Antonelli is leading with 204 points, and Lewis Hamilton is second with 159 points. And here I think we can pause and say, what do you think will happen? One of the oldest drivers already in his 40s, or the young teenager? Who will win? The football player who approached his 40s, Lionel Messi, just lost to a teenager, Lamine Yamal, obviously very similar age to Antonelli, in that pulsating, but ultimately, Argentina came undone against Spain. You can see that Messi kind of didn't mind, because obviously he spent most of his life in Spain, but it's quite interesting. It's kind of like, this year, even especially in F1, but also in the FIFA World Cup, felt like, it's, the old legends, are really, it's their sort of last dance, and the new perhaps future legends, have arisen. So it's quite interesting over here, that it is the teenager over here who's gotten the better of arguably the best footballer in the world. Here, can the teenager get better of arguably the best Formula 1 racing driver? We shall soon find out. But I think Hamilton over here, he can definitely get one over Antonelli, and frankly speaking, if he didn't make mistakes, which is another very funny thing that you would not expect the guy with the 20 plus years of experience, to make mistakes, right? To not perform to the best of the ability, and it is the teenager who actually then delivers, who should be making mistakes. So Hamilton definitely is gonna keep it clean. Same for third, George Russell, 154 points. So you can see, that form of Antonelli is really taking the fire away from the Drivers' Championship, because you can see we've done what I predicted, that we would be able to outscore Russell, but Antonelli over here is clearly the driver to beat. Charles Leclerc is 4th on 126 points now, clearly in the 4th place because of his victory in Great Britain. The last 2 races, obviously, last race in Belgium, finished second, was leading with less than 10 laps to go. Leclerc is still relatively behind the duo of Hamilton and Russell, but if he wants to be thinking about the World Championship, he's gonna win here, with Hamilton being second, and hopefully, Antonelli being beaten by Russell. That would be ideal scenario for the Monegasque Prince. 5th, Lando Norris, the reigning world champion for McLaren, 103 points. 6th, Oscar Piastri, McLaren, 92 points. 7, Max Verstappen, Red Bull, 91 points. Let's hope, they won't really matter in a race. We definitely do not want to tangle with them. 8, Isaac Hadjar, Red Bull, 60 points, doing, for the first time since, I believe, Sergio Perez or Daniel Ricciardo, you really have that second driver in a Red Bull delivering the performances that the car deserves. 9, of course, is Pierre Gasly for Alpine, 42 points. He was the first driver since Ricciardo that really, badly underperformed in Red Bull, but look what he's doing at Alpine. 10, Liam Lawson, Racing Bulls, 39 points. 11, Arvid Lindblad, Racing Bulls, 22 points. The only rookie, of course, on the calendar. 12, Franco Colapinto, Alpine, 19 points. Pull off a great move over there, around, obviously, the outside, of his teammate Gasly and Lawson, reminiscent of Zonta, obviously being in the middle of Michael Schumacher and Mika Häkkinen. That was a great move there on a camel straight by the McLaren driver, but it only spurred Schumi to bring the championship for Scuderia Ferrari. after 21 years. Yeah, Messi should have done what Pinto has done and pull off some, of the famous legendary moves. Yeah, so then we have 13. Oliver Berman has 18 points. Haas really needs to score points because look at this: 14, Gabriel Bortolato, Audi 10 points. 15 is then Carlos Sainz Williams, 6 points. 16, of course, Alexander Albon, his teammate, for Williams, 5 points. 17, Esteban Ocon has 3 points. 18, Fernando Alonso, Aston Martin, 1 point. 19 is then Nico Hülkenberg, Audi, 0 points. If Audi runs strong here, I expect that Hülkenberg will get a bit of more of a luck and score his first points of the season. 28, Valtteri Bottas, Cadillac, 0 points. 21st, Sergio Perez, Cadillac, 0 points. And 22nd, Lance Stroll, Aston Martin, 0 points. And again, that's pretty much how it will finish. But yeah, it will be interesting. This is again, the race. Again, we will be bringing in a new turbo after the summer break. So maybe you've seen the last of the Mercedes dominance. I really hope so. That would be very important for the 2026 Formula 1 Constructors Championship. Mercedes still having healthy lead, 358 points, and we as Scuderia Ferrari are on 285 points. So that means 73-point difference. But that's now less than 2 race distances, because you can get 43 points, obviously, for the Grand Prix proper. And, it will be important that we do manage, hopefully, the 1-2 over here. Which would have been obviously brilliant for Scuderia Ferrari. Again, the 1-2 is something we haven't achieved, could have achieved in Great Britain, and that would be perfect way to start the summer of 2026. Third is McLaren, 195 points, we got them covered. Fourth, Red Bull, 151 points. 6, Alpine, 61 points based on a tiebreak. They are fifth. 6, Racing Bulls, also identical score of 61 points. 7th, Haas, 21 points. 8, Williams, 11 points. 9, Audi, 10 points. 10, Aston Martin, 1 point. And 11 is Cadillac on 0 points. So all I can say is let the racing start. Now once the World Cup, obviously, fever is well and truly over, you can see the Constructors Drivers Championship, and we will of course be going to Hungary over here, so that we all can enjoy the summer at some beautiful seaside resort. But before we do that, me, Jan, the Smiling Sun champion, I will be racing first in Belgium. It will be a sprint weekend, so I already kind of described it. I'm leading the championship by 19 points, and again, so far I've won both of the sprints in China and in Miami, so I will definitely be aiming over here to go for my 9th sprint victory, which would definitely, extend my rather, meager lead of the 3 points in the sprint championship. Obviously, the sprint championship is something Formula 1 should really do, because you can see, even if somebody like me is really dominant in a sprint, because there are only 6 of them, it can, make for really great storylines. And of course, I'm leading from Norris and Russell, but of course, in a real championship, I'm now leading by 19 points from Verstappen. Great race. I hope you enjoyed that British Grand Prix. And you can see, this is great. Like, you should never give up, right? That was a fantastic race to show you that I've almost fallen outside of the points. Again, I was losing the lead of the championship, but obviously, in the conditions which are maybe not best suited, especially for the ground effect cars of the Scarlet, the Red Ferrari, the dump, especially the full wet, but also the intermediate conditions, I was flying, and in the end, I made my championship contender, make a mistake that he made in a real Formula 1 race, in a stove, and obviously that was fantastic, because now, I'm leading by 19 points, and hopefully it will be more than the race distance, once the checkered flag falls. So wish me definitely good luck with that. Obviously, I will be aiming, to win that Belgium sprint for the maiden time, right? I had that big spin, at the beginning, but I was on the pole position there, but it kind of doesn't count from the 2023. So we will be aiming for a pole, second fastest lap for a sprint, and obviously in terms of the racing, we will be aiming to win it for the 4th time, and of course only get the 3rd pole position, and of course hopefully we can also over here collect our 4th fastest lap, and of course that would be our 82nd, obviously with the podiums in a sprint, that would we are aiming for the 11th. overall. But for the Grand Prix proper, we are aiming for our 80. That would be our 81st pole position, and of course, we also want to see if we can get the 81st podium over here, and of course, very very important will be to win for the 64th time, and hopefully we can also get the 66 fastest laps. So or 67 rather, so definitely wish me good luck with that. So we will see how the racing will go, and then we will go to enjoy the summer. So everybody, are you ready to go racing? Of course you are. So everybody, let's buckle up. I hope you enjoyed this very very informative race introductions. It is one of our favorite series, and now all I can